Welcome to the Fuse Cup Meet the Coach podcast, an opportunity to get to know the coaches and hear from those working in esports in education. Welcome to Meet the Coach episode 4. Today we have a great episode with a really interesting educator who has a wealth of knowledge in both PE and wellbeing. He's been involved in esports and education for a number of years and has recently launched a social gaming club at his school called the Elwood Gaming Club, which has seen around 100 students participate. And while that's a fantastic uptake, I'm sure you can imagine that presents some challenges. We absolutely loved making this podcast, and we hope you enjoy the chat with Mr. Andrew Kinch. So, Andrew, how are you, buddy? How you doing?
Not too bad, Dan. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. You're had a bit of a chat there. You're surviving the snap lockdown in Melbourne at the moment.
It's fine as long as it doesn't go for another couple months.
Yeah, you guys are old hands at it by now, aren't you? You've got it down pat.
Experts.
Cool. Look, thanks so much for being part of our Meet the Coach podcast. You know, you and I have been chatting quite a bit, and very keen to kind of get your thoughts on esports and education. But before we do, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in education for those people watching or listening?
Okay. So it's a bit of an interesting one. I ended up graduating a long time ago for Teachers College, but didn't use it right away until I basically moved to Australia. Sort of a back and forth thing. And I guess the history starts with alternative education. So kids that are pretty challenging, I suppose, and needed a lot of help. And that's kind of what we did. We tried to get them back into the school system, I guess you could put it that way, which then led into a well-being role at Elwood College many years ago. So I did that for about a decade alongside my health and PE teaching, and now it's just down to health and PE part-time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the people we talk to either jump straight into teaching or, you know, had different careers and brought another kind of a whole bunch of wealth with them of knowledge. So it's cool to see that, you know, you've kind of jumped in and out and you've been able to look at re-engaging those kids who sometimes can be challenging. And I think esports is really a really good motivator for them. What about your history with gaming? Like, were you a gamer as a kid? Do you play anything now, or is it just kind of a tool that you use?
Gamer then, gamer now. What's the difference?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I played games since I was probably 12. Like, my dad brought home an IBM PC Junior.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're talking, what is it, 128 kilobytes of RAM, no hard drive, you know, the
floppy disk
you could fan yourself with. And played, and I think a previous coach mentioned playing, like, you know, the Sierra games with King's Quest and stuff. I started with that stuff as well. It's great. And then it, you know, fast forward a bunch of years, a lot of it was first person shooter stuff, but a lot of it was strategy stuff as well, like StarCraft. And a bit of competitive Counter-Strike actually for a few years. I played in leagues and tournaments and stuff on big LANs.
Yeah.
Nowhere like the pros today or anything like that. But this is back in the day of CS 1.0 to 1.6, old school.
Yeah.
Before the days of skins.
Yeah, where everyone was custom, everyone was default character.
Everyone was default.
Yeah.
It was a pretty pure experience. I enjoyed it a lot. And then now, the game that I play with my friends is Warzone, because a lot of my friends aren't on PC. They might be on controller. So it's a little bit of cross-platform. And then my other friends are doing some virtual reality stuff. So I've got a few games in VR right now, trying to get a little bit better at Project Cars 2 and a bit of racing. That's good fun, especially in virtual reality. Very cool.
It's the VR gaming has come on so well, you know, so far, hasn't it? Like, it was really clunky for a really long time. And all of a sudden it just seems to kind of, you know, completely changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we play, you know, Beat Saber here with the kids and a few other things. And it's, you know, once you pop it on, it's immersive. It's great. The kids love it.
Yeah. So, yeah. They're starting to get AAA level now, and the PC VR side anyway. It's getting
there. They're really cool. You know, when you talk about esports and education, sometimes leadership, you know, it's a new concept for them. So sometimes it takes a little bit of gently massaging that conversation to try and get them on board when it was first floated. Was that your experience at your school?
It actually wasn't. It
Oh,
happened very easily because I guess the administration staff know that I'm a gamer as well, and I'm very interested in competition as a PE teacher, coach lots of sports at school, things like that. And so when I brought it up to them, I brought the idea to them for esports. They were pretty quick to say yes, but it's probably because it was part of a bigger picture.
hmm.
So what we've set up, and I've sort of recruited a couple, like a year 12 student, a couple of year 10 students to help run this. We've got a social gaming club this year. We're calling it EGC, Elwood Gaming Club. And the idea is obviously inclusivity, and it doesn't have to be competitive, and it's got to be quick, right? If it's happening at recess, so it's recess and lunch on one day on
Oh,
Thursdays.
yeah, yeah.
But it's working so far. So anybody with a Switch there's 4 screens, a couple of projectors, a couple of Android TVs, and it's like first in needs to dock it and get either Smash Bros or Mario Kart or Just Dance or Screen Cheat I put on last time.
Oh,
Um, and so this is our default, and then we're going to set up a lot of the computers with some Minecraft, and doesn't run very well, but runs just well enough to practice Rocket League. So we're going to get all that going as well. And then some special events and tournaments and stuff if they're feasible. But the idea is that it has to be games that are easy to get out of. So like Rocket League 5-minute games, you can get a few games and that's great.
yeah.
And then of course the esports side of it is a chance for those teams to practice. So I mean, there's 100+ kids on the list at the moment. I had probably 60 to 70 on lunchtime last week.
Whoa.
It's just the second week. So
Yeah.
there's obviously a demand for it, right?
Well, I mean, if you're getting that kind of turnout, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think
So we're
the
really
model
excited.
that you've got, short, sharp, punchy activities, as you said, can cycle. I mean, it sounds incredible. It sounds like there's a lot of scope, yeah, and a lot of opportunity for those kids to cycle through those games, which is cool. I love how you're incorporating the year 12s and giving them some leadership in that too. That's how you really build that kind of long lasting program. So it's not just a all on your shoulders type of thing.
Well, that's it. And the year 12 student I'm thinking of is going to move into a bit of a sports administration sort of role, or at least that path for education. And he's really keen on video games, and he wants to do this kind of organized sort of tournaments for basketball, but it's like, perfect. Can I do Rocket League? And he's really, really keen for that. And I guess the other thing that makes it work is that it's self-sustaining. I'm just walking around. Once it's set up, I'm just walking around and make sure, there's no food around and everybody's, having a good time kind of thing. But then we'll run sort of special events. So I'm planning on Retro Week or retro. It's only once a week, so retro a couple of weeks. And I've already got the AP telling me he's got an old SNES and
Yeah.
gonna bring in some old stuff. So it should be fun.
On Switch, you can actually download the old SNES kind of stuff. And it's so funny when you give kids the opportunity to play it. They're like, "What is this?"
Yeah, actually,
like this is the original Mario Kart. Ew, it's very
that
funny.
just happened, didn't it? The original Mario Kart just appeared on there, I think.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah,
I got it for my kids and just watched their faces as they were like, "Oh, what's
yeah,
this?" I'm like, "This is old school. This is what your dad learnt on."
yeah. That's it. And I think there's actually a real interest for that. Maybe it's short term, but I think the kids will love that old school stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You get that retro niche kind of interest for a little while until
Yeah,
hopefully it doesn't wear off.
that's it.
So obviously, the kids have responded really well to the opportunity to participate. What about in regards to like the competitive side of things? Like, what's been the interest there from the kids?
Oh, I mean, there's already a competitive scene behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So, I've got students telling me they want to play all these different games and they're just really, really keen. Some of them have no idea what it's like to actually compete. They just do whatever the game offers them.
Mm.
So there's a bit of a learning curve for me explaining like what this really is and how you represent the school and stuff like that. But like it's instant. Like they just want to be part of it. So my biggest issue is figuring out who can do what.
Yeah.
So
In
that's
that
next. That's next. Yeah,
in
this
that
next.
limited time, right?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, we're communicating. We're a Google school,
Yep.
so we've got the suite, and I'm using Google Classroom basically to send out all the communication and set some polls and figure out
Mm.
what's what. So I'm not too concerned about it. We'll get there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you spoke briefly there about the misconceptions of students around the competitive side. Like, have you had any misconceptions from parents or staff about what esports and gaming can look like in schools?
So not yet, and I'm ready for that conversation. I got no problem with that. I just think one of the biggest concerns can be around content, right?
Mm.
So the type of game, and that's one of the things we love about the Fuse Cup is, you know, the nature of it all. So, you know, working with our year 7s and 8s, I can easily have a conversation with parents about the, you know, Just Dance 2021 and say, well, I don't think you guys need to worry about anything in particular here, guys.
Yeah.
Having the right games and then being able to explain, hopefully well, I'm putting together a little document for the parents as well, as part of the, well, just as part of the whole package, really. First stage is just a social gaming club.
Yep.
Second stage is getting all that stuff sorted. So far, really, not a whole lot. You know, I think
Mm.
and I think just mainstream wise, I think as soon as parents see something that's organized, a lot of their fears are relieved. I
Yep.
think that a lot of the fears that parents have around video games is just like, what is he doing in there? Or what's she doing in there? Right. And it's just that not knowing.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that's right. It's that lack of awareness of what they're doing, who they're communicating with, if they're communicating with anybody. Um, you know, what are they getting out of it? What are the benefits of it? That type of thing. So I guess you're right. When they see it in a structured, supervised way, where teachers are part of the conversation, there's coaching, there's communication, that alleviates a lot of that fear. In regards to the documentation, you know, our Fuse for Players pack has got a lot of stuff in there for parents. You know, the behavioral management
Perfect.
side of things, they have to sign off on it as well. It
Mm.
clearly says, you know, this is what you should expect from your kids, rather than, you know, if they come and say, I need to train for 7 hours tonight. Well, that's not exactly part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good starting point. So grab stuff from there when you create your doc for sure.
And I feel like for my role as a health and PE teacher, it's even easier
Mm,
because like esports are, sorry, just traditional sports are gamified exercise. Really, they're just games.
yeah.
You know, I mean, they have a whole nother layer of like, you know, pushing human limits and all that kind of stuff, and so that's why they are as respected and revered as they are. But there are way more similarities than differences when you're talking about esports.
Yeah.
I mean, the differences that are there are big, fine, but um, if you take Rocket League for example and just say, hey, this is really creative soccer, and with some if you play it, you're going to find out how hard it is and
Yeah.
how much practice is required and
With
how
more
much
physics involved.
communications. Broken physics, yeah.
Yeah.
But fun physics, right? And that's
Yeah.
it. So being able to explain it and have something that they can actually compare it to, I think is key.
Yeah. And having an opportunity, as you said, to play it so they understand how hard it is, so they can, you know, respect the skill involved
Yep.
in putting it together. That's really key. And we find that once teachers especially have a go at Rocket League, they go,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
Now I can see that it's quite complex. You know, everyone's a bit of
Exactly.
a hack when it comes to Mario Kart, and everyone likes to think that they're awesome at it, and everyone, you know,
Yeah.
can move their body around to Just Dance. But yeah, when it comes to something like Rocket League, and it takes an acquired skill to kind of, you know, move around that space and control the car with your broken physics, as you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a bit more of a respect for the level of skill. What do you
That's
think
it.
some of the benefits you've seen about implementing, you know, esports or your social gaming club? Obviously, we spoke about participation, but what are some of the other, maybe not, you know, not obvious benefits that you may have seen in your setting?
Well, that's really interesting because okay, from one perspective, again, from a PE side of things, competition it's difficult for, I think as humanity, we've all just found competition through sports or war. Hopefully, we're not going there though. But like sports and can obviously dance as a sport, and the Olympics and things like that. It's all like physical endeavors,
Mm.
and then some people just aren't so inclined. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that they don't want to be competitive though. And so even though it's not actually a completely level playing field, it sure feels that way for somebody jumping into video games. I say not a level playing field in terms of like becoming a professional, but um, to compete for your school against other kids that your age and stuff like that, absolutely, it's a level playing field.
Mm.
And so you start to see, very different, um, very diverse groups come to the club, for example, and then forget the competition for a second. You get kids who struggle socially. They might be anxious, or they might struggle with the complexities of being on the spectrum or something like that, and being in a safe space where there's one thing that everybody has in common that they can have fun around, and they can speak that language, means that you're connecting with other people,
Mm.
right? So I mean, I'm finding that it's already been really good. I can already see kids who wouldn't typically engage in a club are engaging in this one.
Yeah, that's so cool. And these conversations, I have them frequently, and that's one of the things that is coming through loud and clear, that for some kids they've found something that they can feel like they can be a part of. And some of these kids, don't really have other options or other alternatives that they generally engage in. So it's a really nice thought to think that we're creating this environment for a whole bunch of diverse kids who sometimes find it tough to fit in socially, or find interests at school. So it's a really strong positive.
Something I
Um,
can add to that too is that if people don't understand what social gaming looks like, with everybody's shoulder to shoulder and whatnot, and I think it's interesting because of the way that streaming and professional, esports are out there, and people watch massive crowds cheering
mhm.
teams on, stuff like that. On day one, we had 7 controllers at the time and 7 kids playing Smash, and the spectators were cheering. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
is an atmosphere you're creating there. So especially when it's not there for ages and ages and ages, like you're only there for a short period of time, people are excited and they want to make the best out of it. So like the atmosphere that you're creating, I think, is key in that situation. And so being able to provide that for kids who don't always find themselves in that kind of atmosphere is another big, I guess, big plus.
Yeah, yeah, and it's from a school's perspective, you've got an activity that's engaging so many kids, bringing them together. It's social, they're interacting, it's positive. Like there's a lot of big ticks there, which is very cool. One of the things that as teachers we're super fortunate and privileged is when you hear those little snippets or those little comments from kids, and about how much they're enjoying things, or observations, or things like that. Have you heard or seen any of the kids kind of talk about the positives or things that they're enjoying about it?
Well, we're only a couple of sessions in,
Mm.
but the kids who want to compete on the esports teams, I mean, it's new territory, right? But a couple of them were super keen and set up a Discord channel, put in all the admin stuff and the bots and everything already. And I'm like, hold your
Cool.
horses. I'm not sure I can slap an Elwood logo on this just yet, but I think it's great that you've already got that. And they already had really smart rules in place. So it's like if
Mm.
it's just for these sports players, and then there might be a section for social gaming, but we'll figure it out. There's question marks there. But the fact that they're already self-organizing, they like this was the whole idea, was we needed
Yeah.
to be self-sustaining and um, student-led, basically. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm already astonished at how good it's going. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, I think it's also important to kind of touch on the fact that it's not all roses, right? Like there are
Oh,
obviously, issues in regards to implementation or timing or finding a venue or something like that? What have been some of the challenges that you've come across in either the implementing or the organization or the structure of running your, whether it's the esports side of things or the social gaming club?
Again, early days, I think the biggest issue is just going to be selections.
Yeah.
Already, like I know that not everybody wants to compete for all the same games and things like that, but I didn't expect, over 100 kids that are actually signed up on the Google Classroom, and probably more year sevens who haven't figured that out yet. So once we figure out something fair and whatnot, and I hope to try and I'm not sure how the timing will work, but I'm hoping that we're going to run some in-house little tournaments as well, so that they can get a chance to do these things, even if they're not able to, come out to an event. So, man, the main challenges are just around the organization stuff, because it's our first year, but I don't think that'll be an issue. I don't think that'll be an issue in the future, really. The other thing I was going to say was that the attitude, you definitely don't want a frustrated group of kids playing, right? You don't want the saltiness. So, and I think naturally you're going to have less of that anyway if you're doing social gaming, because there's just certain etiquette that, social contracts, I guess, of being in the same room as other people versus being a keyboard warrior or something like that. And sometimes if you've been a keyboard warrior for a while and you're a bit toxic, you can bring that, but then people look at you funny. So it kind of brings you back into line. But my simple rule is, you're obviously welcome to our club. If you're salty, get out, come back next session. It's just simple, Yeah,
well, I mean, as you said, you're trying to build culture and atmosphere, and you don't need toxicity. And obviously, for something like the Fuse Cup, you're representing your school. You would expect the same level of behavior if they were playing basketball or netball, or you wouldn't tolerate, salty or aggressive behavior towards another player in any form of sport, whether it's traditional or esports. So it's good to know that, yourself and other schools are having those levels of behavior expectations, even in the social aspect as well, because it sets a tone. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other side of that is, if you're not, pulling your weight in class, if I wouldn't let you play on the cricket tournament, so same thing for Fuse Cup, we'll find the sub.
Yeah.
So you just got to make sure that you're on top of everything. It's a privilege. I mean, again, that's another tick in the box of, actually, this is pretty close to how you just run a regular sports team, So that's we're very hopeful for the year. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's good to motivate. It's a good motivating tool, for those students who may not be necessarily pulling their weight in other areas of the school as well. So, some schools use that as a carrot, others don't. But it's the beauty of it is, obviously everyone has to do what suits their educational setting, and there's no right or wrong way to go about it, really, because it's obviously every school setting's different, and you have a culture within your school of how you want to run it.
Quick sidebar, just real quick. I just remembered, actually. So when I was looking into it and trying to find out what kind of budget we might have and everything like that, it kind of went to the parents' council, and it went quick. Like, it was just the parents were like on board. So again, that I think that just goes to that point I was trying to make before, that rampant free-for-all gaming, for example, worries parents. Something organized, doesn't raise the same alarm bells, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we often have conversations around that, P&F getting on board, or school fundraising, or I think the strength is definitely having an education background and providing a structured environment that schools can go and parents can go, oh, okay, I can see what's going on there. And often, sometimes, all it takes is also showing parents, well, this is what the competition looks like, a short little YouTube clip that we've filmed, and they can visualize, in schools as well. They go, now I get it. So it's not played remotely. They're not playing online at home. Like, no, they're representing their school in person or online, but at school. So yeah, it's kind of just shining a light on some of those misconceptions that can often bring people along.
Yeah.
Now, big question, mate. Where do you
Okay.
think the future of esports and education might be heading?
All right. Look, I don't know where it's going, but I know what my hope is, because right now, I personally, and I know it's getting better, but at least I'm not in the scene, but from what I can see, the pathway is broken to becoming like a professional. So I've always thought there are things we can learn from traditional sports, whether that's through high school or for organized clubs and things like that, that are it's very, very clear where you are, I suppose, in the pecking order. There's no real question, because you've got a chance to compete
Mm,
in the right circumstances, not just online randomly with your friends, but under pressure in a LAN, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like side by side on the venue, for example, and you actually feel the mental side of competition, which is not talked about nearly enough.
Mm,
Um, and I think that high school esports has an opportunity to educate so that kids don't just grind to get good. Because right now, if you talk to a coach or something like that, they would just say more is better.
yeah.
Not all coaches, but
Mm,
I'm talking like professional coaches who have been in the scene for a long time. That's what they think, because that's how they did it. You know, um, I just think that the opportunity is a big one to um, start from the grassroots, like start that pathway to make it a safer pathway.
yeah. And I think with more and more universities starting to get on board, then
Mm,
there seems to be a bit of a transition period between, well, I'm in high school and now I can potentially use this as a pathway into university,
yeah,
and then some of the pro teams are actually partnering with universities too. So there's a bit of, I think there's a bit of work being done around that kind of linking between pro teams and highly skilled young people. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. There's
and
also some changing work happening around the well-being side of things within
yep,
pro teams.
yep.
But yeah, there's still obviously a lot more work there. But they're starting to be aware of some of the concepts and some of the issues around excessive or sustained gaming. Um, so
And
yeah,
I
it's
guess
starting to change, but it's, yeah, as you said, still quite a lot that we can learn from traditional sports as well. I mean, you
there's a
wouldn't
bit.
go and play a soccer game for 10 hours, would you?
No, no, you wouldn't. But it's great that the universities are on board, but those are already people who've made it to that level and not sacrificed their high school education. And I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting one, because your wisdom, your maturity, your prefrontal cortex development
Mm,
as a 19, 20-year-old is a lot different than the 12 and 13-year-olds who want to become streamers
yeah.
or pro players, for example. And then they're like, the logic isn't really there. And
Mm,
so it's a key time to be able to intervene and
and guide.
um, yeah, and guide and encourage the right things
Yeah.
instead of the wrong things. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Look, we touched a little bit on well-being, and I kind of want to, I know you wear two hats. You wear the PE and well-being side of things. So with those particular areas of expertise, where do you see the links of esports? We've spoken a lot about the traditional, similarities between esports and sport.
Mhm.
Um, but where do you see this fitting in a PE and well-being umbrellas?
Well, I mean, there's a tricky side to it. I think it's an important one to talk about, which is that um, game design versus the design behind AFL, right?
Mm,
You can be passionate about both, but game design can sort of make you repeat those tasks a lot more beyond their benefits,
yeah,
whereas and there's no biological limits, not, well, there are, but they're harder to feel. So you might get tired playing games, but you could stay there for 6 hours, whereas if you're tired in footy, you're going to collapse.
yeah,
So those built-in regulators aren't there for gaming, which is again where that
mm,
education and stuff needs to come in. And then I think also, and you can sort of tie this to the last answer around maturity of young high school students, where, you know, if they see gaming as an answer to a problem, right? And if they happen to be good at it as well, then they'll talk about the fact that they want to become professionals or something. But if it's, if they're anxious and gaming calms them temporarily, it doesn't actually solve an anxiety problem.
Yeah.
And then they can build all these justifications that this is their way out. They don't have to engage in the regular things. It's like a shortcut, all that kind of stuff. That can be dangerous. Again, high school esports, great opportunity to talk about this stuff. But at the same time, being able to, I guess, encourage all the best parts or milk the most out of what high school esports can offer is that you're building that the teammate properties that you get from sports. You're building that connection to other people. You're building communication skills, all these things that are, I think, underplayed quite a bit because they seem overshadowed by like what I just said, which is a valid point. But if it's underplayed, then people don't see enough of all this stuff. And that's why I think this is great. It's because it's an opportunity to showcase like the way video games should be played. Like we moved away when we went online. We moved away from, like nudging your brother when you're playing Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo to make him screw up at the corner or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that had an inherent social connection. And then our connections are still there online, as we've seen through COVID lockdowns, right? Like people are desperate to connect through video games or just through video chats and stuff like that. But yeah. So just being able to give the highest quality experience of what a video game was designed to be able to bring, I think that's going to be great for somebody's well-being as well, because they're engaged in the right ways instead of the wrong ones.
Yeah, it's kind of that merging of two worlds, isn't it? The fun aspect of online play or video gaming, but the social component of having someone there to bounce off, or I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of those answers, mate.
Look, like one of the great things about sport in general, sorry, last thing, is like when you do it properly, it is absolutely an avenue for personal growth. At least I'm speaking from my personal experience. My personal growth went through the roof with my beach volleyball career, if you want to call it that. And I could have just played casually and just done whatever and been more, I don't know, I wouldn't have been, but let's say I was toxic playing casual volleyball or something like that, right? Which is kind of what we can see with gaming. It is a variety of experiences, but like the opportunity for personal growth with competition, not just playing games, but with competition, is again something I think is undersold.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's so exciting, that so many kids are going to have that opportunity this year to kind of find that social aspect, but the growth through the competitions as well. And look, we can't wait to be in Melbourne and to see your team in action and meet face to face in real life, if you will. Even though we've had quite a few face to face conversations, but
it'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be great. And look, we can't thank you enough for being part of obviously the Fuse Cup, but agreeing to be part of our podcast series. So thanks so much, mate. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this episode, and always a pleasure chatting.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
All right, man. Thanks.
See ya.